Welcome to Legal Candy with attorney Candice Colucci and
MK, Mary Catherine. Glad to be here.
the show where we unwrap the juiciest legal topics in the sweetest way possible. Today, we are diving into the historic moment of Donald Trump winning the presidency again.
By a landslide. Wow.
But it's not just the political comeback making headlines. We're going to be unpacking the legal whirlwind surrounding his criminal and civil cases, and what that means for a potentially sitting president and what it means for a president that's actually going to be taking office. Stick around for all the legal insights, served with a sprinkle of sweetness and a dash of sharp analysis. Welcome to Legal Candy. So to give you our legal disclaimer, nothing in today's episode should create any type of attorney-client privilege. Everything that you're here today is just based on the opinions of me and my trusted partner here, MK, and everything that we find is based on our internet research. If anything that may seem inaccurate, please just do your own independent research. And that being said, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, please reach out to our office. We are a law office, also Colucci Law Group, and so if we can't help you, we'll point you in the direction of somebody who can. You can always call us, ask us for a free consultation about any issues that you're having. Call our office at 727-733-9438 or send an email. We usually get that number wrong. Or send an email to office at Colucci, Colucci, law group, all one word, .com, and we will try our best in order to help you because we are here to help the people. So now let's get into it. So we are here right now in November of 2024. And now it's official. We have talked about the presidential election and we have discussed about what was taking place with Biden, and Biden pulled out of the election, and then Kamala ended up taking his place. And so there was just a lot of discussion about what that was going to look like as far as the voting was. And I remember when we were sitting talking on the phone, me and you, the last election. And so this one was definitely one where we stayed up just really kind of on the edge of our seats, figuring out what was going to take place, because it's not always a big difference between Republican and Democrat depending on who takes place. And I think that because it has become so polarized more recently, it really, truly seems like a lot rides on who becomes president because of so many other facets. But I think right now, more than ever, with what has taken place on Trump's road to becoming president, I think that has played a significant part. And us now realizing that now that Trump is president, what does that mean? And I think it means a lot is going to change more than I think most presidents have ever said. And so what I thought was interesting was, so right before the election, I'm sure people were watching, Joe Rogan does a special with Trump. And what Joe Rogan said is he had said that Trump's people have asked him before about doing an interview. And he really didn't want to get involved in so much politics.
Right.
Like, he's got a great platform. He talks to a lot of people, but he didn't really want to find himself in the middle of backing a political president. And what I thought was so interesting about what Joe Rogan said for why he now did the interview is he said kind of what we've talked about, is that he felt it was a combination of two. One is, he says, I have never in my life seen a candidate, former president or just a candidate in general, ever in his opinion be treated so unfairly, and for everything to be stacked against trying to stop him from being able to run.
And this is coming from a man who liked Bernie Sanders.
Exactly.
He was a big Bernie Sanders fan.
I forgot all about
went
that.
all the way to Trump.
Yes.
So he's written
That's exactly what he said.
I watched when he said that.
Yep. And that's really what we had talked about. We've talked about it from a legal perspective. We had Luke LaRoe on, civil rights attorney, constitutional attorney, who also, I think we all kind of came to the same consensus. We're like, listen, from a legal perspective, these cases that are being levied against him in such a way that are being done so quickly, so fast, trials are being sped up. He's being charged with things that we can sit here and say there has been a lot of people in office before who've done things that are similar.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the charges are based on things that are very kind of vague when it comes to some of the federal laws. And so it really did feel like a very much concerted effort by a certain type of people, I would imagine.
Like
that,
a witch hunt.
Yeah, to wanting to stop his ability to run.
Mm-hmm.
And in my opinion, the idea of democracy and the idea of what we have all fought for is so that we can decide based on the candidates that are put before us. So to watch what it felt like the government try so hard to stop him from being able to give us the option felt like you were taking away our democratic right to vote. That's what it felt like. It really felt like it was becoming extremely biased against, let's treat him differently than we would treat other people. Because from a legal perspective, I'm telling you, there are things that were absolutely done differently because it was Trump. So that was one of the reasons why Joe Rogan said he did the interview. And then he also said, and then I saw him get shot at. So then it was like, he felt like, not only did he feel like he was getting an unfair shake at the thing, but then all of a sudden he gets, shot at. And I also thought it was interesting that Elon Musk, who came forward, Elon Musk said the same thing. He said, I wasn't a big fan until...
He was a Democrat.
Yeah, he was a Democrat. He said, I wasn't a big fan. I have goosebumps thinking about it because I liked the way he said it. He said, when I saw Trump get shot, and then he comes up not knowing if there's another shooter, not knowing if the shooter has been taken down, not knowing if he's going to be shot at again, that he came up with that fist in the air, that famous photo of
that courage.
Yeah, and that's what
reaction.
He said. He said, the courage I saw in that man made me think that's who I'd want to be running this country, is someone who I felt that had that type of courage and grit. And I didn't think about that as much, and he really has. But I thought it was interesting because I feel like, it's, you don't always know you have to try to figure out, why are you going to vote for somebody, or why are you going to defend somebody? Like, why are you following that candidate or whatever it is? And most of the time it's based on their political views, or maybe you like them, maybe you don't like them, maybe those things. And I honestly believed that what took place against Trump during his time after he was out of office and now planning to run, I think that behavior that he had, that people believed he was enduring, then to be shot at, and then to find out that potentially when he was shot at, there was conspiracy around, did we not protect him enough because he was a former president who gets, CIA protection? There was all these different divisions that were supposed to be working together to protect him, and now there's this huge investigation on who failed to do their job. We found out that there's people who...
investigation on the assassination, which was bungled by the, that whole thing.
Yep. So you start thinking, oh my gosh, like what are they doing to this man who at some point in time a lot of people just didn't like, and now people were like, wait a second, now maybe I have to rethink what are the factors that I'm finding to be valuable in the man who may be running our country. And I think that that's what changed for a lot of people, specifically Elon Musk, to go, you know what, maybe it's not all about, his personality. Maybe it's not all about every single, position he takes on something that I agree with, but maybe it's about what he's had to go through to get there. And is he humbled by it? And then is this person somebody that I can feel comfortable with running my country?
Also, I think that Elon Musk felt that Donald Trump has a right to say what he wants to say, and this whole thing really hinges on Elon Musk buying X, giving Trump that platform of non-biased news. Elon Musk said when he was on Twitter, he used Twitter constantly, constantly. And he could literally see during the prior election that he could see that things were slanting to the Democrats.
Yeah.
So,
and what a difference that whole thing made, right?
I mean,
I feel like I don't think people even realize that that the elections were happening. I thought that was, I mean, like, it was on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, it was everywhere you scrolled. And then we found out afterwards at the last election that Facebook had a huge role in manipulating the content that was being pushed out to people in a democratic way that was really trying to back the Democrats. And so that became, he was sanctioned for that. And then he said he was never going to do that again. And then you have, you have the fact that, that Twitter ended up not allowing Trump to speak anymore. And it was just like, are you insane? I'm like, the stuff that I have seen on those social media platforms, I can assure you Trump wasn't doing anything worse than some of the horrific things I've seen. I mean, people are committing suicide based on what's being posted and not taken down, and pages that are created that nobody will remove. Like
Trump slander is kind of kind of funny. Yeah, like it's almost it's archaic kind of.
So it is really interesting that what a difference this election looked like, because everybody had been admonished to not manipulate it in a social media fashion. And I felt like I barely saw anything on social media. At least I wasn't seeing it as much as I had seen before. And I think that made a huge difference of saying, okay, now what does it look like when there isn't so much manipulation happening right before the election?
And look at all the money the Democrats spent too. All the billions of dollars. And Trump, no, not so much. And look, there was a 62% turnout, and that's pretty big. That's huge.
Oh yeah,
you know, people were invested in this election. That is for sure.
They were, and I think if you would have told me, because I remember watching, like maybe half an episode of The Apprentice, and I remember thinking that there's nothing worse, in my opinion, sometimes, than a boss or a leader that leads in a discriminatory way or a derogatory way. And not even, I don't want to say discriminatory because I don't think it's discriminatory. Derogatory way. Yeah. That is abusive in nature. I didn't like coaches like that. I didn't like leaders like that. And so I did not like him. I'm like, I couldn't, I'm like, you don't need to make people cry to have them work for you. I'm like, you don't need to, that shouldn't be what your goal is to do, and being unapologetic about it. I mean, if you do happen to make somebody cry as a leader, but at not by having like belittling them. But to do it intentionally. Same thing. I'm like, who's that one cook, that one chef or whatever, who's just
Gordon Ramsay
spitting all the food out in someone's face, and you're just like, that doesn't work. Kitchen. I always think, for every person who does become successful because they had a leader like that, you have thousands more who were broken down, who never recovered from that. Yeah. And that's what I think about. I think about, some people are like, well, that's what made me stronger. Well, yeah, it made you stronger, but it made a lot of people a lot weaker. And I think that outweighs the few people that may succeed from it than all the people that were broken because of that type of behavior. And I don't think it's needed. So I felt that way about him originally, and to look at it now and to go, if you had told me that Trump was eventually going to stand for equality, like rights, constitutional rights, freedom of speech, things that man never attempted, like freedom, just things that he would have never thought that. And what's sad about how we got there was not because I think that it was always his goal. I do think he wanted to be president originally because he felt there was a lot of, I think unfair situations that were taking place, and people were being bought and paid for a lot. And he felt like he was trying to make this stance that I'm not going to be that kind of person. I'm independently wealthy. I've also run a business, and a country should be ran like a business. And all these people running these countries have never run businesses. So I think that was really his angle, that he thought he could make a difference. But then, by no intention of, I think, of his the Democrats forced him into this place where he became this martyr. I mean, it's just, you could never have imagined that that's where we would be at, where Trump would have maybe have been forgotten in history, and now there's no way to forget him.
He's likable.
Yeah,
like I find myself softening. The little Trump dance that the football players are doing is little, you know, I'm starting to soften.
Yeah, I mean,
to his approach.
With what we know, what was happening with him civilly and criminally, it was interesting to watch this election unfold with so much on the line, but it really was life and death for this man. Like, that's what I realized right before I go. What's so crazy is we've never had an election like that. Like, if someone loses an election, they go on with their life. If he lost that election, it was going to be a completely different scenario. If the Democrats took office, they were never going to stop pursuing the criminal charges, the civil charges, to where he'd be financially broken down and then potentially be sitting in jail. That's the difference of him now becoming president and him now being able to have more control over the fact that there are instances where maybe there had been an unfair situation for him. Doesn't mean he's 100% innocent of anything, you know, which no politicians really are. But there were just instances where it was becoming overwhelmingly unfair and very much targeted towards him. And I think what's just so remarkable is what he stands for now. Like that, I think his followers are absolutely obsessed. And I don't know what other president you can really say that about. I think we've talked about JFK Jr., but I think it was more of a women thing.
Yeah.
But men, I mean, it's like I see cars decked out and I see flags in front of people's houses. You see, it's like it is an absolute cult that has been created behind this. And there are just little things that have just excited me along the way of like some of the things that I felt that were very unfair. Like he gave that woman out of Texas who had been arrested during COVID for keeping her hair salon open, and she had explained why she kept it open. She's like, I employ, the youth, and they live paycheck to paycheck, and if they're willing to come in and people are willing to come in with masks, why shouldn't we be open? And she ended up getting jailed for that, and he, I think, has already moved to pardon her, or he's going to, but then he gave her an opportunity to have a place on, I think, the Senate, or he's giving her some kind of seat or something,
He's kind of giving quite a few of his friends seats.
Yeah, and I'm like, and it's just, I think it's time for things to be shaken up a little. And that's exactly what he intends on doing. And I think there are a lot of people that are really scared. And I'm super excited about Robert Kennedy and the food administration.
I'm gosh, like, me too.
I have liked Robert Kennedy for a very long time, and I was so brokenhearted with.
And he went on Rogan too.
Yeah,
and so did JD Vance
for sure. And so that's exciting to see him say, like, we're coming for you. Like, we're not going to be bought and sold by this, this kind of concerted effort to put the people last and put their personal, connections and
do you
kickbacks.
Think that's what the Democrats were doing? Like,
I mean, I don't know if I want to say it's the Democrat. I think it's just there was a system in play. I think to a degree everybody does it, but I think that now that they have pushed the envelope so much about how unfair the situation was, I think now the idea is for everyone to disrupt the system of what has been created before,
And the passion is beautiful. It's nice to see the passion. I mean, even though some of it's some people are really, really adversely affected, but the passion, like my daughter and the kids, they're invested.
Yeah.
Gen X, Gen Z, or whatever they are.
Yeah. No, I definitely, it's going to be an interesting ride to see.
He's become almost like the working man's hero.
Which is,
how can that be? It's like when I say it, I'm like, how can it?
Yeah, I'm like, but you know what? When you push something so far to where it becomes unfair and people see it, then people want to rally behind it to make it fair, and that's really what had been created here, and it's nice to see so many people see that and go, all right, we're ready to see what this means. Yeah, so I thought, I watched Joe Rogan's interview. I mean, 3.5 hours, I think, when it premiered. And I was like, I'm watching it like late at night.
Same.
And it goes from like 10,000 views to like the next day it's like 20 million views to like the whole world's watching it.
But Kamala wouldn't do it.
Oh yeah. Well, and I thought what was interesting about some of the things that Trump said that kind of made me look at him differently was he said that this is what I thought was interesting was he said, I think Joe Rogan had asked him about, was it surreal? Like, tell me about, this is the cool thing about social media and these podcasts and these kind of things that you're now getting to hear from people that you never got to hear from before in a way that's like, tell me what you're really saying. You know,
unscripted conversation.
Like, you didn't really know what was in any president's head. You know, and Trump really is going to tell you everything that's in his head when he should have probably stopped. So this 3 hours for him, if you haven't watched it, I would tell you to make sure you go watch it. It's because this is the man that's going to be leading our country. But it was so interesting to hear him when you're not filtering him, when you're not cutting him off, and you let him talk. That man can talk forever, all over the place
about
everything. As much as people thought that he's not taking it seriously, he's not really invested in it. I'm like, he has ideas and suggestions about everything. He was much more involved in things that I was surprised about, but I liked it when he talked about what was surreal. And he was comparing the situations, and he said, you know what? When I first walked into, he was talking about when he becomes president and he goes into the White House and what that's like, because we don't know, you know, it's like people don't really talk about what it's really like. And he said, you know, when he's talking about the shooting too, in comparison, he was like, no, the shooting, he felt like, I felt like I knew where I was out. I knew I was alive. I knew I'd been hit. Like the minute that he said he got shot, that wasn't surreal to him. What was surreal to Donald Trump was not when he got shot. It was when he went into the White House for the very first time after he'd been elected, and they took him into Abraham Lincoln's bedroom, and he got to see Abraham Lincoln's bed, and he felt what an intense honor it was to be standing there in a room of a man that kind of built so much of the foundation that we're on now in a way that, like, I mean, I was like, you know, it's much more serious to him than I think people really thought it was, he was
eloquent at times.
Yes.
When he went on Theo Von and he was talking about addiction, like with his brother.
Yeah.
I mean, and I have addiction in my family, as you know, and it was, he was very wise.
Yeah.
Like he had some really nice nuggets there. And I'm like, this is Donald Trump. What is he doing? Talking about addiction, and he's wise. I'm like, how can this be?
When he was first running, I remember saying, I wish he would just scale it back a little bit. Like, if we just did a little less name calling.
Just a little.
It's the same reason why they tell you not to curse, because the cursing just devalues the rest of the content. And I think that's been his issue. It's his intense ability to want to like name call everybody else that then gets muddied in the fact that he has something to say and he has ideas. And so, and I remember thinking that even then when he's first running, I was like, I just wish he would just chill out, because the name calling creates such a hate by other people because they're hearing it on a scale from a potential president, and you're going, well, that can't be the country we want. Like, that's not how we're gonna. We don't want to.
It's gone from one big extreme to another.
Yeah.
But he's tempered that a bit. Have you noticed?
I thought it was a lot less derogatory name calling. I thought there was a lot less of it, to where he was able to really, explain himself and his views and his thought processes. And I think, I just can't, I still find it remarkable that we're sitting here today in the middle of history, which is really where we're at.
Did you, real quick, did you see when he went to the White House to speak to Biden after he won? And
what happened?
The camaraderie between the two of them was like off the charts. Like they were just smiling and beaming like they were all friends. And everybody just kept saying that Biden's voted for Trump.
Oh yeah, that's their saying.
But I mean, he was like, they were just like best buddies.
Yeah.
It's
exactly what it's looking like. I mean,
and Trump was magnanimous and Biden was, they were very cordial to each other. It didn't seem fake at all. It was kind of,
once the game is done.
Yeah,
then they're
like
looking
Trump
at it
said,
going,
he said politics is a tough game, and he kind of was like, you did a good fight, good job. Like you said, he was almost magnanimous.
Yeah.
would have thought?
Yeah, there we go. Okay, so what does it mean legally? Now that Trump is now our president in waiting, he's our president-elect, he has several cases that are pending right now. So this is going to be more history because the last time, I think that if we look back in history, there's something crazy. Like, I think we've only had one president who had any infraction prior to becoming a president. I think it was like the dawn of time. I can't remember who president was, but he had been
Jackson, maybe?
Like Jackson had a ticket for riding a horse at night or something on the wrong side of the road.
He was something crazy in the White House.
Yeah. So that's the only infraction we've seen. And then one of the first cases you learn in law school about constitutional rights and those things is we learned about Paul Jones in the case with Bill Clinton, and that's where this idea of this immunity takes place, that the actions that a president does prior to coming into the White House before taking office, he cannot be prosecuted. No cases can be running while you're sitting president. And the idea of that is to say, hey, listen, he needs to be running the country, not showing up for depositions and trial and stuff like that. So that's really the only other time we've had an issue like that, because Paula Jones said that she was an intern for Bill Clinton when he was, I think, a senator or a governor, local governor or something. And she said that she was sexually assaulted by Bill Clinton. And so that was one of the first rulings that had decided that, hey, whatever takes place prior, he cannot be charged civilly or criminally while he's a sitting president. And so that became case law. And so that's the only other time we've really had it. But now we're dealing with a president has a lot of pending charges all over the place, and it should blow our minds to think that that's how much stuff is going on in the background, all based on and you know, like we've seen, is an attempt to potentially make it to where he couldn't run, which didn't work. So some of the stuff that we've talked about is we have a lot of pending stuff, but we have the New York criminal charges. So remember, that was where he got convicted of 34 counts of felony that was based on that hush money that he gave to Stormy Daniels, who he had an affair with, and she was potentially going to release her story to the public when he was running the first time, and he paid her money. Well, his attorney paid her money, and the way that he paid it was in these fraud ledgers, and so he was charged with 34 counts, and it was all based on this fraudulent ledgers that he was really giving her hush money, but it was being written as bills to like the attorney, and then the attorney was the one paying her. So he was elected on that. He was convicted on those counts, and then there was no sentencing. So the sentencing was delayed. And that was a case that they sped up really fast. The sentencing was delayed. And so the question is now what happens? So now they are back to kind of revisiting this. And so Trump's team is obviously saying, hey, we should be still delaying these proceedings. He gets sworn in, January something, I think is the swearing in date. So they're saying, listen, it needs to be, Trump is making all attorneys and the government look back at the laws we've had and the things that we've written over time and now redefine them, because that's kind of how law works. Is you put a law in place and then you allow it to kind of sit there, and then over time you either define that law more by case law, by actual cases that fit into it, or you start redefining the law and going, okay, that didn't work because what we didn't take into account is this, this, and this. And that's really what Trump really has done. His cases, which he didn't know, have become this really remarkable kind of landmark amendments and changes that probably need to be done back to the law. And then also redefining what some of these laws are that we had that we never had it tested. And so one of them is some of the stuff that they're looking at is they're saying, listen, that constitutional protection that we're talking about a president shouldn't have to sit for criminal or civil cases, is they're saying, well, it should also apply to presidents in waiting, that now he's the president-elect. He should be seen as differently than somebody else, because now, giving you an example, if he goes to a sentencing in 2 weeks from now and he gets sentenced, well, he can't go to the sentencing, he can actually start doing his time, because by then he'll be now a sitting president. So
January
that's one of the
20th,
things, January 20th. So that's one of the things. So this judge is now becoming this center, and he's having to answer these questions of what does that mean? And does it mean that we continue to delay it and push it along because of some of these questions? And then we also have the question of the presidential immunity. Will he qualify for an immunity? That whole argument that we talked about before about the immunity behind the Supreme Court's come back and said, listen, if a president is doing certain things as presidential conduct, then we should give them immunity. So there's this argument of, does he qualify for immunity based on some of the other acts that he's done with the riots and stuff like that. So there's a lot of questions behind that are being asked that are going to take a lot of unraveling to get to. But the criminal case is, what it's looking like right now is they will probably delay it. We're already in November. It's about to be December. There's no way they're going to do a sentencing this soon. They will delay it until after he's no longer president. That's literally what they can do. The question people continuously ask is, can he pardon himself as president?
Can he fire Jack Smith?
And can he fire him? And that's a very interesting question, because it comes down to interpretation of the law. We do see that there's a clear I will argue that it's much more clear on federal crimes, that if it's a federal crime that he had been convicted of or charged with, I do believe that a sitting president can pardon himself and pardon other people from it. But state crimes are different than federal crimes. And so I think there's less of I think there's less of an affirmative argument on the fact that he will be able to pardon himself from a state crime, and that's what those crimes were state crimes. So that's going to be very, very interesting. But I think at that one,
because the Jack Smith, those are federal cases, right?
Yeah. So the Jack Smith ones. So the other cases, so the criminal cases that he has of 34 convictions, crazy. I think those will wait until after he has been sitting president. I think at that point in time, I think he qualifies for probation of them. I think they're also going to do an appeal on them, so there'll be an appeal.
President.
Yeah, our probation. So he has to sign in, log in.
You can't go overseas. Yeah. You're on probation.
Yeah. You have to ask your probation officer. Listen, I can't go see you in China. My probation officer says no. I got to check in. Then he has the federal cases in D.C. and Florida. So those were, and that's when we're talking about the cases that were brought by Smith. This was an interesting one. So the question that he was asked right before was that like in October, they asked the president, they said, if elected, would you fire Smith, leading to the end of the two cases? Now, here's the thing. When a prosecutor, state prosecutor, federal prosecutor, brings these cases, when you hear that word, they brought the cases, that just means that the state or the government has decided to actually go forward with the charges. And so you'll have a lead prosecutor or the state attorney, those words you've ever heard before. They're just the person that represents the state or the government. That's who that person is. So just if he fires the prosecutor on the case, doesn't mean the case goes
right.
away. I mean, because the next prosecutor can come in and go, hey, I'm here. Hello. like he doesn't represent us all. Like we are still the people. So they can still go forward with the cases. It's just that
can they dismiss it though too? Or do they can't. They can't.
Well, because remember, also there are times when it is a state attorney, it's all politics, guys, where a state attorney or a prosecutor, state or federal, it sometimes could be a vendetta they have or something that they feel strongly about. So if you do remove that person, it means the next person who steps in may be of the different opinion and go, hey, I'm the one with the authority now to make the ultimate decision of if I'm going forward with these charges or not. And I do not want to go forward with the charges at this point in time. So it can lead to a dismissal of the charges, but it doesn't mean automatically just because you change the prosecutor. But he was asked, hey, will you fire the prosecutor? And he says, oh, it's so easy. It's so easy. He goes, well, will you pardon yourself or will you fire Jack Smith? And he goes, I would fire him within 2 seconds
of taking office. I know. He's almost witty.
I'm like, God, I'm like, you know what? You made him. You know, we did. We made him. We created this man here. We gave him the platform. We gave him the attention, and then we, as a country, went so far as to trying to stop him from running that now, with the power he has, he's going, I'm going to right these things wrong because they happened to me, right? So sometimes that's what happens. Sometimes he may not be this advocate for the people until something happens to him. And then he goes, okay, well now, just by default, I'm going to represent the entire everybody. So that is that's one of those questions there. So the federal cases too, that's the same thing. Is it will be a question and there will be an argument of, can he pardon himself from those federal cases? And I would say arguably he can't. So that may be some of the first those that he does, is start to figure out what cases he can pardon himself for, and they'll start working on those. Then he's got the Georgia RICO case. So those are the criminal cases that have all that drama behind it, that were brought by the Fulton County District Attorney, that Fannie Willis, the one who was a Democrat, who was disqualified from prosecuting the matter because of her prior romantic relationship with the fellow prosecutor. That whole entire drama behind it. But those cases are based on the fact that they believe that he improperly tried to question the election results of Georgia and those kind of things. So those are criminal charges, that he attempted to overturn the 2020 presidential election results by effectively engaging in acts that they believe were unconstitutional at that point in time. So that's the same thing, is that she's going to be removed. So the question is the next person who takes over, are they going to still pursue those charges? They're state charges, so I don't think he has the right to pardon himself. But they will absolutely, at this point in time, there's not enough time, they will not take place during his presidency. It would be something that would happen afterwards in 4 years. Then we've got the litany of civil lawsuits, right? So those are the cases where money's involved. This isn't criminal. We have got and
Jean Carroll.
Oh yeah, Jean Carroll defamation cases, civil fraud cases. We got the attack on the U.S. Capitol. It goes on and on. We've got the New York Attorney General who charged him. I mean, that was the craziest one, guys. Remember the one where, because they had argued that he had overvalued his properties on loans in New York, that the state of freaking New York City came after him, and they got a judgment for $454 million based on the fact they're saying he overvalued these properties, when the bank was like, we don't care. We do our own investigation. We're fine with those prices, and he's been paying. We're fine with all of that. And still, that one to me is probably the most obvious of, in what I believe, a political position of a powerful person used their political position to potentially impact the election in a way that made it unfair. That's what they did against Trump in New York. There was no reason. Is that what made him move
to Florida? Was that a catalyst for him moving to Florida?
I think that was. Felt like New York had turned on him. I mean, I really think that was huge for him. But that, to me, I mean, like, you're telling, there was no victim. Every single, like we talked about this before, every single person who's ever tried to sell their property, if you've ever been a realtor, you'll know. I mean, come on. Think their property is worth more than it usually is and overvalue the property. And then when you start negotiating with them, they'll take much less. Well, how are they not considered fraudulent at that point in time? Because they've written down what they thought their value was. Everybody overvalues things.
Why is he held to a higher standard?
And so he asks for loans and they say overvalues his properties, which I also think is hard to value Trump's properties, because regardless of what you think they're worth on paper, they're also Donald Trump's properties. So there's a value that's hard to kind of come to, because he does have a celebrity status. There are people who would be willing to pay way more over market value to say, I owned a property that Trump owned. Yeah. So that already is arbitrary and very vague. But they literally, the only actual victim could have been the bank. And that would only have taken place, let's just say the bank relied upon Trump's evaluation of the properties, right? Then let's say Trump default on the loans. And then the bank goes to try to foreclose on those properties and finds out they're not worth anything of what he said, which is still crazy because the bank has an independent right to do their own evaluation before they're giving money.
Too. We need to make sure that they're held accountable.
So let's just say that all did happen and the bank goes, because you lied to us about the value of your property and we went to go foreclose on them, we only got pennies on these properties that we gave you massive loans for. Then I can understand why the bank would maybe say, well, maybe we should sue Donald Trump for fraud on his application of these loans. That would maybe be something that potentially could happen, and it does happen. But in this instance, the bank is going, we don't have any problems. Like, we're not concerned about the value he wrote on those applications. It was literally the entire government, including New York, coming forward and going, we want to stop this guy. How can we do it unfairly? And let's go after him for something that everybody does under the sun is overvalue their own properties. And then let's get a judgment against him for $500 million, of which is just going to the state of New York, not even to the bank because they weren't harmed. That case gets under my skin a lot and gives you an idea of what we're talking about. So all of those cases, there is appeals, I think. And anything that has a judgment against it at this point in time, attorneys have filed appeals. So those are going to be all things that are more than likely going to get stayed during the time that he is in office. Like they're not going to be able to go forward with any case that has Donald Trump's name on it. They will be an automatic frozen the minute that he gets sworn into office on those cases. No appeals will be able to go forward, more than likely. Nothing should be going forward. So that will be definitely interesting of how of just how that really plays out. I mean, I just find it just remarkable of what he's going to do. So I think what happens is, I think it was 100. It's like after a president takes office or before when they're doing the process, they have the obligation of putting about 100 and I think 20 positions that they are allowed to now appoint people to. And that's what can severely change the makeup of some of these departments to where it really becomes more on, obviously, Trump's side. So I like that somebody was saying that Trump's announcements for people that he's putting into office has been like
clown car.
No, you said a clown car. She said a clown car. But to me, it's been like a draft. I feel like everyone's like, and he's taking. And everyone's like, oh yeah,
like
really?
fancy football.
You're like, I thought he was gonna go there. You're just like, you don't know. You're just like, I mean, I thought it was just hilarious. He puts Elon Musk in some position, and then I think Elizabeth
Department
Warren
of Government Efficiency,
and Elizabeth Warren says something like, how is it efficient that you've put 2 people in place for one person's job? And Elon Musk responds back on social media and goes, it's because we're not getting paid, so it's very efficient. I'm just like, I guess this is what happens to the world, right? Politics. I'm like, we're the social media world. And so here we are in a time when I used to be more afraid of what the future looks like. I'm ready to see what it can be, because COVID really scared me. And the way we handled COVID,
and he came out fighting from the get-go with that COVID. Like that, I mean, sticks with me.
Yeah, it really did. I was very disturbed.
Everybody.
Yeah, I was very disturbed in how COVID unraveled, and how it has absolutely been forgotten. Where is the research? Where is the information? Where is the culpability? Where is anything? Like, can you please tell me where is this massive? I was just thinking the other day that I wanted to ask probate lawyers. This is one thing I was thinking about. I wanted to become part of a probate lawyer association, and I wanted to ask probate lawyers as a whole, did you have an increase in cases based on COVID deaths? Like, I still believe the COVID numbers of deaths has been astronomically.
My eye doctor died of a COVID vaccine.
Overestimated. So not COVID vaccine, that's a whole different thing. But I'm talking about COVID. Like people who died from actual COVID. You would have thought that those numbers of unprecedented deaths that happened over a certain time should have rocked the nation in the consequences.
On the news,
every day you turn on, it was like the number just kept on going.
Scariest fear-mongering.
So scary. You would get back and it was like, as of today, there's been so many.
Yeah, it's like you can sit.
Where are those records? Right?
My daughter's watching that.
Shouldn't you be able to talk to the funeral homes and they should be like, listen, we've just been we were so overwhelmed. But probate should have been a huge area too. If all these people are dying, more than likely younger than they should, did probate numbers go up? Are there more cases of probate? Like, I just wanted to do the aftermath consequences of show me these numbers were verified and then show me what those consequences were for those numbers. I mean, I'm deeply disturbed at that concept. And then I just also was disturbed at how unfair I thought the system was in their attack against Trump, whether he was guilty and whatever it was. There was nowhere on the fact that they had targeted him in a way to try to
he was kind of like devil's advocate.
To try to affect the election. And then tried to turn it around that he was the one who was unconstitutionally trying to affect the election.
Right. And then and then the election transpires this time, and it's like a landslide. Yeah. So then it makes me wonder what was going on with that. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I'm like, we're in the dawn of time. Yeah, unprecedented times we talk about a lot, but I'm excited to see it, and I feel like it's going to be an interesting ride to see it unravel, to see what's going to take place, because I remember the first time Trump was in office, I thought, well, listen, one of the benefits of Trump being in office, you can't keep his mouth shut. I'm like, listen, we're going to learn about aliens. We're going to learn about the Pentagon Papers. Like, I was just thinking that man was going to be like tweeting things. And he's like,
Kennedy,
he's going to be live on Facebook.
There's a bunch of gold over here. Behind this painting is right.
That was what I was thinking was going to take place. And I was a little excited for that. And then he takes office, and that's not what takes place. You know what I mean? It really, truly wasn't. But now, after what took place against him, I think it's going to be way more like that. I think he's going to shake up every single thing that they can shake up in a way of like, we want to inform you. And I think that he wants people to know. So I think he's going to be very informative along the way of like, hey, let me explain to you why we're doing this and what this looks like and what was happening before and what should be happening now. So I'm we
can talk about what FEMA did to him too.
Yeah. Oh, next show. So
next show we
are. So stay tuned, because we are going to be talking about all of the hurricanes that took place in Florida. As you guys know, I was one of the unfortunate property owners that had suffered massive damage from the hurricanes, and what that has looked like, the aftermath, and dealing with the insurance companies, and federally what that's mean with FEMA, and what is it? What has it specifically meant when FEMA employees were being told and telling other people that if they come to a house that has a Trump sign, that they are to avoid that home? Which I was a little disturbed by that information. I thought that was horrific. So that being said, stay tuned. Please like, follow, subscribe, whatever it is, all those things they talk about that you should be doing. And let us know if you have any comments, questions, or concerns. Send us questions. We love talking about all kinds of different topics to empower you with the knowledge. So I thank you guys for listening and tuning in. See you next time.
Thank you. Did that go the right amount of time?
53 minutes, and we started about 4 or 5 minutes into it. So
we'll do the hurricane. My laptop's gonna die.
Do you have a charger?
No,
is it the same charger as mine? Do you know what your charger is?
Apple. Yeah.